They call it the Death Zone, but that name is too clean for what really happens above 8,000 meters. Up there, your blood thickens, your brain swells, and every breath feels like inhaling through a drinking straw filled with glass. Somewhere in that thin, poisoned air, a climber lies motionless in the snow, his goggles frozen over, his skin the color of wax. 18 hours ago, his team looked into his blank, ice-rimmed eyes, checked for a pulse, and walked away. They weren't cowards, they were dying too. The storm had turned the summit ridge into a white tunnel of howling wind and flying ice. Ropes vanished under fresh snow. Oxygen gauges fell toward zero. Radios crackled with half-finished sentences and then silence. On Everest, you don't get dramatic speeches at the end. You get a numb, hollow calculation. If I try to save him, we both die. So they left him. For 18 hours, the mountain chewed on what was left of his life, hypoxia eating his brain, frostbite climbing up his fingers like black fire, the cold trying to shut his heart down, one slow beat at a time. Guides at Camp 4 spoke about him in the past tense. Other climbers stepped around his body in the dark, whispering the same sentence to themselves. There's nothing we can do. And then, against everything the textbooks say, against everything any doctor would sign his name under, he moved. This is not a story about a clean victory on the highest point on earth. This is a story about what happens when the mountain decides you should already be dead, and you somehow refuse. If you're into true survival, extreme psychology, and the brutal truth of Everest, stay with this story to the end. Mount Everest is sold to the world as a bucket list dream, a summit photo above the clouds, a line on your resume, a story to tell at dinner parties. But there is another Everest, the one most people never see. The Everest where bodies are used as landmarks, where the air slowly erases your ability to think, and where a single wrong decision at 8,000 meters can follow you for the rest of your life. In this documentary-style story, you will follow one climber's final push into the death zone, the storm that trapped his team the moment they pronounced him dead, and the impossible chain of events that led to his return from a frozen coma after 18 hours in the open. No heroes in capes, no clean endings, just raw human biology, bad decisions, and a mountain that does not care who you are. As you listen, imagine yourself on that ridge in the dark, your mask icing over, your friends collapsing around you. Would you keep climbing, turn back, or leave someone behind? Before we start Chapter 1, support these survival stories by subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and telling us in the comments which country and city you're watching from. The night before summit day never really feels like night. Camp 4 sits on a tilted white desert of ice and rock, a place so high that jet trails pass beneath you. The sky is a brutal, empty black, torn open by the constant roar of the wind. Inside the thin orange tents, headlamps flicker like candles in a church full of nerves and quiet lies. Our climber, Daniel, lies in his sleeping bag, staring at the frost forming above his face. His heart pounds hard enough to shake the nylon. The gauge on his oxygen bottle hisses softly beside his head, ticking his remaining hours of clear thought away. He knows the statistics. He's read about bodies left on the route, about fingers lost, lungs drowned by fluid, brains starved of oxygen until they misfire like broken wiring. But tonight he repeats the same sentence he has said to himself for 2 years. If I reach the summit, it will all make sense. Around him, the camp feels like a battlefield hospital before an assault. Guides shuffle between tents, checking masks, tightening crampons, reading wind charts lit by blue screens. Sherpas move with quiet efficiency, swapping empty cylinders for full ones. Taping over frayed straps, boiling thin tea no one really wants to drink. Someone vomits behind a boulder. Someone else whispers a prayer in a language Daniel doesn't understand. His radio crackles to life. Summit window still looks good, the expedition leader says. Wind dropping after midnight. We move at 1. A pause. Remember, no summit is worth a life. Turnaround time is 11 a.m., no exceptions. Daniel nods in the dark even though no one can see him. He tells himself he'll obey that rule. He believes it, now down here, while his brain still works. Above 8,000 meters, promises dissolve. He unzips the tent for a moment. The cold slaps him like a hand of glass. Headlamps from other teams float up the slope, tiny ghosts already moving toward the balcony. The line has started. Everest is calling its debtors. He thinks of his family back home, of the second mortgage he took to pay for this climb, of every comment that called him selfish, insane, obsessed. He pictures the summit photo that will silence all of them. Just one image, one peak, to justify years of obsession. When he closes his eyes again, sleep never really comes, only fragments of dreams where he's already falling. If you've ever chased a goal so hard that you were willing to ignore every warning sign, let this story play in your ears until the end. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe and like this video so more people can hear what the Death Zone does to that kind of ambition. At 1:07 a.m., Daniel steps out of the tent and into a world that doesn't feel entirely real. The wind has dropped, but the cold has sharpened. It bites exposed skin with the precision of a scalpel. Headlamps form a trembling chain of light above Camp 4, winding up into the dark like a trail of fireflies trying to escape gravity. He clips his Jumar onto the fixed rope, feels the tug of the line that will guide him toward the summit, and, if anything goes wrong, mark the route of his body on the way back down. His Sherpa, Dorje, taps his shoulder and checks his mask. "Good!" he shouts through his own plastic shell. Daniel gives a thumbs up. The gauge on his oxygen reads full. For now, the first steps feel mechanical. Lift crampon, kick into ice, pull on rope, breathe, exhale steam into the night. Within minutes, every sound from Camp 4 is swallowed by the slope. All that's left is the crunch of metal on ice, the hiss of oxygen, and the rasp of his own breath echoing inside his mask. Above them, the line of climbers moves with agonizing slowness, a living traffic jam inching toward a point in the sky. Altitude steals from him in tiny, invisible thefts. First, it takes his warmth. His fingers, inside 2 layers of gloves, begin to feel like someone else's hands. Then it takes his sense of into something that feels like hours. Yet when he looks at his watch, only 10 have passed. His thoughts become sticky, heavy, drifting away from the present. He passes a climber kneeling beside the rope, shoulders shaking. For a moment, Daniel thinks the man is crying, but then he sees the dry heaves, altitude sickness twisting his stomach inside out. A guide leans close, checks his eyes, then shakes his head. "You go down," the guide says, voice flat. The climber doesn't argue. He turns and starts descending alone, swallowed by the red dots of headlamps below. One dream erased in the dark. Higher up, ice crystals ride the breeze like tiny knives. They slice at Daniel's cheeks and gather on his lashes. He blinks and sees halos around every light. He tells himself it's just the ice, not his brain misfiring. He forces a rhythm. Step, step, breathe. Step, step, breathe. The mountain doesn't care how many motivational quotes he read at sea level. It only cares about numbers, liters of oxygen, core temperature, minutes of exposure. Somewhere around the balcony, at roughly 8,400 meters, he notices his thinking slip. A question surfaces in his mind. Why am I even doing this? And for a moment he can't remember the answer. Then he remembers the mortgage, the years of training, the people watching his tracker back home. Pride hooks into his spine and pulls him upward. Turning around now would mean facing all of them without a summit. The wind picks up again, a low moan sliding along the ridge. Dorje looks back. "We okay?" he shouts. Daniel forces the words through numb lips. "We're okay." He is not okay. Hypoxia is already rearranging the wiring in his head, but he's too close. At least, that's what he tells himself. And if you've ever pushed forward just because you're already too far in, Remember Daniel on this ridge. Stay with his story. And if it's hitting something inside you, share this video so more people see what that mindset looks like at 8,000 meters. By the time the first hint of grey leaks into the horizon, the line has stopped moving. Daniel finds himself standing on a knife-edge ridge, one crampon on Nepal, the other on Tibet, clipped to a rope that disappears into a tangle of bodies above. Headlamps cluster around a narrow rock step, their beams crossing and blinding, turning the world into a mess of shadows and ice. Word filters back through broken shouts, a bottleneck at the Hillary step. Too many climbers, not enough rope. Some are going up, some are trying to come down, all funneled through a gap, barely wide enough for one person at a time. The cold does not wait politely while they argue. It moves through the line like a patient predator. Daniel feels it pushing through the seams of his suit, chewing at his toes, climbing his calves. He tries to wiggle his fingers inside his gloves. They respond slowly, like they're answering from another room. Time starts to stretch again. 5 minutes. 10:20. The altimeter on his watch may as well be a bomb timer. He knows the numbers. Above 8,000 meters. The body is dying, even at rest. His oxygen gauge has dipped. He calculates, poorly, because hypoxia has turned math into a foreign language, how long he can stay stuck here before his clear thinking runs out. Around him, people start to unravel. One climber rips off his mask to scream at the line ahead, only to choke on the thin air and slap it back on with shaking hands. Another sits down right on the ridge, legs dangling over a drop that disappears into the clouds, mumbling that he's just going to rest for a second. Guides move along the rope, slapping cheeks, forcing people to stand, barking commands that sound harsher than they mean to. Daniel's world narrows to inches, the rope in front of his face, the boot heels just ahead, the squeak of carabiners sliding past fixed anchors. He stops looking at the summit. It's too far, too abstract. Survival shrinks down to the next 5 steps. Somewhere below them, a radio crackles with news. The wind is picking up earlier than expected. The safe window is closing. That 11 a.m. turnaround time from the briefing at Camp 4 floats up in Daniel's mind like a ghost. He glances at his watch. If the line doesn't move faster, they'll be breaking that rule before they even touch the summit ridge. Dorje leans close, eyes narrow behind fogged goggles. "We go down if too late," he says. "It's not a question." Daniel nods, but inside, something resists. After all this, after the money, the training, the years of obsession, hypoxia adds its own poison, a warped sense of invincibility. He feels strangely calm, like the consequences can't really touch him up here. That's the lie the death zone whispers, "You're fine," until you're not. When the line finally lurches forward again, the relief is mixed with something darker, the knowledge that the delay has stolen time they cannot get back. They push upward anyway. No one wants to be the first to turn around. If you're still with Daniel in this jam in the sky, let this be your reminder. Sometimes the most dangerous place isn't the storm. It's the moment everyone decides to ignore the clock. If this chapter kept you here, tap like and tell in the comments which country and city you're watching from, so we know where these Everest warnings are reaching. When Daniel finally hauls himself over the last crest, the summit is not the solitary, sacred place he imagined. It's crowded, prayer flags snap in the wind, half buried under a tangle of boots, crampons and discarded oxygen bottles. Climbers huddle around the narrow pyramid of snow, jostling for a spot to raise their arms or hold a flag for a few frantic photographs before frostbite steals the feeling from their hands. The view is everything the brochures promise and nothing his brain can fully process. The world falls away in every direction, a frozen ocean of ridges and clouds under a sky so dark it feels like outer space. For a few seconds, he feels something like awe, a thin, fragile thread of joy running through the exhaustion. He has dreamed of this moment for years, replayed it in his mind on treadmill runs and lonely training climbs on much smaller peaks. But the death zone has a way of taxing even your joy. The air is too thin to hold on to emotions for long. His chest aches. Every breath burns. His thoughts lag behind reality, as if they're being transmitted with a delay. He fumbles with his camera, hands clumsy in his gloves, trying to frame the shot that will prove he was here. Dorje snaps a few photos of him holding his ice axe, the summit ridge curving away behind him. 5 minutes, Dorje says, tapping his watch. We go down. 5 minutes. That's all the world's highest point grants them. Daniel looks around and notices details he didn't expect. The glassy, empty stare in another climber's eyes, the way a man's hands shake uncontrollably as he tries to adjust his mask, the frost building around nostrils where the face covering doesn't quite seal. Victory, up here, is indistinguishable from early stages of collapse. He checks his oxygen. The needle has slipped further than he'd hoped. The delays at the bottleneck have eaten into his reserve. A small, rational voice in the back of his mind whispers that every second they stay is another second stolen from the descent. He pushes the voice away and forces a grin for one last selfie, goggles reflecting the sun like mirror-black coins. Then the wind shifts. It's subtle at first, just a change in tone, a deeper note in the constant roar, but Dorje hears it, feels it. He grips Daniel's arm. We go. Now, on the way up, every step felt like chasing a dream. On the way down, every step will be about outrunning a debt. Daniel doesn't know it yet, but his summit photo will be the last image of him that makes sense. There is no call to action here, no neat lesson, only a simple realization echoing in his head as they turn away from the highest point on Earth. The mountain doesn't care that I made it. The first meters down from the summit feel almost easy. Gravity finally works in Daniel's favor. His legs move with a strange, hollow lightness, as if someone has turned down the weight of his body. For a brief stretch along the summit ridge, he even thinks, maybe the worst is over. That thought is the first real mistake of the descent. The weather changes faster than his mind can keep up. Clouds pour over nearby peaks like grey waterfalls, swallowing blue sky. The sun disappears behind a lid of shifting white, and with it goes the thin warmth that kept his extremities just on the safe side of freezing. The wind ramps up from constant to punishing, slamming into his side and threatening to peel him off the ridge with every gust. Spindrift whips across the slope in long, white snakes that bite into any exposed skin. His oxygen gauge continues to fall. Numbers that looked reassuring at the summit now look like a countdown. Each breath feels less effective than the one before. The world begins to lose color at the edges. Rock and ice flatten into shades of gray. Sounds arrive slightly out of sync with what he sees, like a badly dubbed film. Hypoxia is beginning to uncouple his senses. They rejoin the same rope line they used on the way up, but now it's more chaotic. Some climbers are still staggering toward the top, hours behind schedule, eyes glassy. Others are coming down too fast, unclipping and reclipping in a frantic rush, stepping over anchor points with the wild impatience of people who suddenly understand how late it is. Everyone is tired. No one wants to admit how scared they are. At one anchor, Daniel fumbles his carabiner. It slips from his glove, swings free for a second, and clips back almost by accident. A smarter, more oxygenated brain would register the close call. Daniel only laughs, a short, dry sound that fogs his mask. That was stupid, he mutters, but the words don't carry any weight. The part of him that should be terrified is already half asleep. Somewhere below, a shape in a bright suit lies half off the trail, one arm flung out as if pointing at something. For a moment, Daniel thinks the climber is resting. Then he sees the unnatural angle of the neck, the ice crusting along the jawline. No one stops. The rope demands forward motion. The cold punishes hesitation. The body becomes a landmark, another proof that the summit is only the halfway mark. A headache starts behind Daniel's eyes, a throbbing pressure that feels like someone is slowly inflating a balloon inside his skull. Cerebral edema, the silent escalator to coma, often begins like this. He doesn't name it. He just tightens his mask and keeps moving. Thinking clearly is now a luxury he cannot afford. He tells himself he's fine, that once he reaches the balcony, everything will get easier. The lie works for another 30 minutes. Then his right hand stops listening entirely. He looks down and watches his glove hang useless at the end of his arm, as if it belongs to someone walking beside him. "George!" he croaks through the mask, voice slurred. "Something's wrong with my hand." Georgia turns, studies him. In that long second, the Sherpa sees what Daniel cannot. The slowed pupils, the off-balance stance, the tiny sway toward the drop. "We hurry," Georgia says. "No stopping now." Sometimes survival sounds like comfort. Sometimes it sounds like an order you don't fully understand. If you've ever told yourself, "I'm fine," while every warning light in your body flashed red, hear Daniel's steps on this ridge. Let his descent play out before you do that again. And if this chapter hit you, subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments which country and city you're listening from, so we know where these stories are echoing. By the time they reach the balcony again, Daniel's world has shrunk to a tunnel of fogged plastic and pain. The headache behind his eyes has exploded into something savage, a pounding that makes it hard to keep them open. His right hand is still a dead weight, and now his left leg lags half a beat behind the rest of his body, as if it belongs to someone slower, weaker. The wind is no longer a background roar, it's a physical force, shoving him sideways with enough power to make his crampons scrape and skid on the ice. Each gust tears warmth out of his suit and flings it into the sky. His teeth chatter so hard he bites his tongue, tastes blood inside the mask, metallic and distant. Inside his chest, his heart hammers like it's trying to break free. Hypoxia and exhaustion have teamed up. Every step feels like sprinting at sea level, but his muscles get none of the reward. He can't string thoughts together cleanly anymore. Sentences break in the middle. Memories intrude without warning. His daughter's drawing of a mountain stuck to the fridge, the smell of coffee in his kitchen, a joke from a climbing partner on a training climb years ago. They flash and vanish, disjointed like someone flipping through channels in his mind. Dorje keeps checking on him, more frequently now. "You okay?" he shouts. "Fine," Daniel answers, but the word comes out thick, slurred, as if his tongue is too big for his mouth. Dorje's eyes tighten. He's seen this look before. He knows the slope between fine and unconscious is short and steep up here. They're close enough to see the glow of Camp 4's tents far below, tiny orange embers scattered across the dark plateau of the South Col. The sight should be comforting. Instead, it feels impossibly far away, like a village in someone else's life. The distance between here and there is measured not just in meters, but in how much brain Daniel has left that still works. The next section of rope dips slightly, and Daniel loses his balance. It's a small stumble, the kind that wouldn't matter at sea level. Up here, it's like almost stepping off the edge of the world. He pitches sideways, weight swinging out over empty space. For a moment, gravity wins, and the only thing holding him to the mountain is a strip of frozen rope and Dorje's hand clamping down on his harness. "Focus!" Dorje yells, voice edged with something that might finally be fear. "Look at your feet. One step, then next." Daniel tries. He really does. But the commands feel like they're being issued to someone standing a few feet away. His vision narrows further, edges going dark. Sparks of light dance across the ice in front of him. The mountain tilts, or maybe he does. It's hard to tell. The last clear image that makes sense in his mind is the line of tents at Camp 4, flickering like a promise he can't quite reach. He takes another step, then another. His boot catches on something, a buried rope, a chunk of ice, he can't tell. He pitches forward. This time, Dorje is a fraction too far away. The world snaps sideways. The sky and slope trade places. There is a violent, jarring impact, a rush of snow against his face, a sound like someone slamming a door in a distant room. Then the lights in his mind simply go out. Daniel stops being a climber and becomes something else on the mountain, a motionless shape on the snow, one more problem for exhausted people with too little oxygen and too many decisions to make. When Dorje reaches him, Daniel is twisted awkwardly against the slope, one arm buried in powder, the other flung out across the rope as if trying to grab a hold that isn't there. His goggles are askew. Frost has already begun to creep along the edge of his mask, spiderwebbing over plastic and skin. Dorje shakes him once, hard. No response. He presses a gloved hand against Daniel's chest, feels the faint rise and fall of breath slowed to a crawl. Hypoxia, exhaustion, cold, 3 knives working at once. He shouts Daniel's name into the mask, but the sound just bounces back into his own face. Minutes later, 2 other climbers reach them, faces grey with fatigue. They crouch in the wind, trying to shield Daniel's body, checking his pulse with clumsy, frozen fingers. It's hard to tell what they feel, a thread of life, or the phantom beat of their own blood echoing in their gloves. Someone looks at their watch, does a quick calculation of distance, daylight, oxygen left. The math is ugly. "We can't move him," one says, voice ragged. "We're barely standing." They argue, but only for a moment. Up here, morality is forced through a brutal filter. Can this person walk? Can we carry them without killing ourselves? If the answer is no, the mountain quietly supplies its own verdict. Dorje radios Camp 4, words like unresponsive, no coordination, possible cerebral edema, running low on O2, scrape through the static. The reply is slow, heavy, weather worsening. Everyone exhausted, no spare climbers for a rescue. The storm has turned heroes into scarecrows, barely holding themselves upright. Finally, a decision forms in the thin air. One of the climbers leans close to Daniel's hood, as if he might still hear. "I'm sorry, brother," he whispers. "We can't help you." They reposition his body so he won't slide, anchor him loosely to the rope, tug his hood down over his face. It's a small gesture of respect in a place that has none to spare. Then one by one, they step around him and continue toward Camp 4, each glance back growing shorter until there are no glances at all. Hours pass. The line of headlamps thins and disappears. The wind takes over, howling across the ridge, blowing snow over Daniel's still form. His core temperature drops, blood thickens, ice hardens along his eyelashes. The brain that once calculated risks and dreamed of summits swells painfully inside his skull, then begins to dim, system by system. Night folds over the mountain. Somewhere far below, in warm houses on flat ground, families check trackers, assume the silence is just bad signal. Up here, silence has a different meaning. 10 hours, 14, the death zone does what it always does. It waits, patient and indifferent, for the body to match the mountain's expectations. And yet, for reasons no doctor can fully map and no climber can honestly claim to understand, the story you're hearing did not end on this ridge. If you're still with Daniel on this frozen ledge, let his 18 hours of nothing sit with you. If this chapter shook you, subscribe and like so more people learn what those simple words, left for dead, actually mean up here, and tell us in the comments which country and city you're hearing this from. It begins with a twitch no one sees. Deep inside Daniel's chest, his heart, slowed, muffled, flirting with the edge of silence, finds one more stubborn beat, then another. The cold has pushed his body into a strange, suspended state, not truly alive in any way that makes sense, not entirely dead either. Somewhere between those two shores, something in him refuses to let go. His brain surfaces first as fragments, There is no clear "I am awake now." There is only sensation, crushing weight on his chest, a burning in his fingers like they've been set on fire, a roar of wind that sounds like an endless train passing inches from his ear. He tries to open his eyes, ice glues his lashes together. When they finally crack apart, the world is blurred white and grey, like a fogged window after a long sleep. He doesn't remember falling. He doesn't remember being left. In the hollowed-out space where those memories should be, a single thought rises: move or die. It's primitive, older than language, older than any training plan or summit dream. Just move. The first attempt is pathetic. His arm jerks, barely dislodging snow. Pain screams through it, not sharp but deep, a sick, grinding agony that says tissue has frozen and shattered at a level he can't see. The second attempt is worse, because now he knows what it will cost. But somewhere beneath the layers of frost and failing nerves, the command repeats: move. He rolls. It takes everything he has left. His face grinds into the snow. Ice claws at his skin. He gasps, mask hanging crooked, pulling in air so thin it's almost symbolic. There is no plan, no map in his mind, just the half-remembered sense that down is safer than up. Camp 4 is down. Warmth, such as it is down. So he crawls. It isn't heroic. It is ugly, slow, animal. He digs his knees into the slope, hauls his body forward inches at a time, follows the faint groove of boots and rope scars in the snow. The mountain tries to erase his trail as quickly as he makes it. Wind shoves him sideways. Gravity tugs at his deadened limbs. His hands, what's left of them, don't feel like hands anymore. They are blocks he drags along the surface, leaving smears of blood that freeze almost instantly. Hours blur. Sometimes he blacks out mid-crawl, face pressed into the snow, only to jolt awake again with no idea how much time has passed. The ridge, the slope, the endless white, everything narrows to the next hand's width of distance. The summit might as well be on another planet. His life at sea level feels like a story someone told him as a child, and yet, somehow, incredibly, the orange of a tent finally cuts through the white. At first, he thinks it's a hallucination, a cruel trick of a starving brain. But then another appears, and another. The plateau of Camp 4 wavers into focus like a mirage that decided against all odds to be real. Down in the cluster of torn flags and flapping nylon, someone looks up and freezes. A shape is moving across the snow, wrong posture, wrong angle, like a broken puppet being dragged by invisible strings. For a heartbeat, the camp goes silent. Then voices explode in disbelief. That's Daniel. He's alive. They run to him, stumbling in their own haste, oxygen hoses swinging, hands grab his suit, his harness, his hood, faces loom over him, goggles pushed up. Eyes wide with something between horror and awe. A doctor inside the camp will later use words like profound hypothermia, severe frostbite, likely high-altitude cerebral edema. The men who haul him into the tent use simpler ones. Impossible. Miracle. Not yet. Daniel doesn't register the labels. To him, the world has boiled down to one pure sensation, heat seeping back into a body that had already started to arrange itself for death. It feels like being set on fire from the inside out. He screams without realizing it. That scream, more than anything else, proves to the others that he is still here. He will lose fingers, toes, parts of his face. He will spend months in hospitals, years answering questions that no doctor or scientist can fully resolve. How did his brain start again? How did his heart keep enough of a rhythm to be restarted? How did he generate the strength to crawl after 18 hours exposed in the death zone? No one knows. What they do know is this: the human body has limits, but the human will sometimes doesn't respect them, and on Everest, occasionally, the mountain's verdict gets challenged by something that refuses to lie down. If you made it through Daniel's 18 hours and his impossible crawl, remember this story the next time someone glamorizes that thin line of snow at the top of the world. And if you want more true survival tales like this, raw, imperfect and brutally human, make sure you're subscribed, drop a like, and tell us in the comments which country and city you're listening from. Your dot on the map reminds us that these warnings and these miracles are being heard far beyond the death zone. What happened to Daniel on Everest isn't a feel-good miracle. It's a contradiction that medicine, logic, and even experienced climbers still struggle to file in the right box. He did almost everything wrong by the rules of survival, stayed too long in the death zone, burned through his oxygen, collapsed alone on the descent, was left for dead in temperatures that freeze exposed flesh in minutes. By any reasonable calculation, his story should have ended on that ridge, and yet it didn't. His survival does not erase the bodies the mountain keeps. It doesn't cancel the grief of families who never got a second chance. What it does is force a harder question. What are you really chasing when you step into a place designed to kill you? Is it a summit photo, a line on your biography, a way to outrun ordinary life for a while? Or is it something darker? A need to stand so close to the edge that you finally feel how thin the ice under all of us really is. Everest doesn't hand out meaning. It strips everything away until what's left is brutally simple. Cold, height, time, and whatever you carry inside your own chest. For some, that's enough to finish them. For a few, like Daniel, it's the spark that refuses to go out, even when the rest of the world has already written the final line. If this story stayed with you, if you saw a piece of yourself in his obsession, his mistakes, or his refusal to quit, don't let it fade when the video ends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next survival story. Hit like so this one reaches more people before they romanticize the death zone. And tell us in the comments which country and city you're listening from. Somewhere out there, another climber is packing for a dream on Everest. Maybe your comment and Daniel's 18 frozen hours will be the voice that makes them think twice.